1. As the mayor of the town of Clayton, I'd like to call this regular town council meeting to order. I'd like to ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let us pray. Most gracious and heavenly Father, we thank you so much for your generous blessings of this day. And Lord, we ask now that you guide and lead us as we proceed with the business for the town of Clayton. For it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We've got a pretty solid agenda this evening, and I'm going to go right on. First of all, make sure we don't have any adjustments to the agenda.
We have one minor adjustment, Mayor. We'd like to pull from the consent agenda under draft minutes, bullet point June 15, 2020 closed session.
Okay, so we're going to pull those draft minutes from the June 15, 2020 closed session.
Yes, sir.
All right, any others?
That's it.
All right, if not, any discussion on consent? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve the consent agenda with the exception of the June 15, 2020 closed session minutes.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. I'll now ask the town clerk to do a complete roll call for the motion and the second.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Bernice,
Yes.
Councilmember Holder, Councilmember Bunn,
Yes.
Councilmember Everett.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, town clerk. Up next, under administrative items, is the recommendation of appointments to the Downtown Development Association Advisory Board. And we're going to give the floor to our economic developer, Mr. Patrick Pierce. We can't hear you. Can y'all hear him?
No.
Okay, no. I mean, I can because he's next door, but it's not coming. I'm not hearing him on the computer.
And Heidi, is being force muted, or is it something you can control?
I just unmuted him, but he is able to control unmuting himself.
Okay, I thought it was.
I think we.
I apologize for that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll use computer audio. All right, so these, we are seeking approval of these four community members to serve their terms with one reappointment to the Downtown Advisory Board. So, like your recommendation and or providing a recommendation and seeking your approval.
Okay, any questions or comments for Patrick? All right, being none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the slate of recommendations to the Downtown Development Advisory Board.
Mayor, this is Bobby. I make a recommendation. We appoint these four new members to the DDA. I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval of the slate presented. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. And I'll ask the clerk to conduct a roll call.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Bernice,
Yes.
Councilmember Holder, Councilmember Bunn,
Yes.
and Councilmember Everett.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Up next this evening on our agenda, very pleased to have with all of us, the town council in the town of Clayton, Elizabeth McCullough, and she is representing the Racial Equality Coalition. Had an opportunity to join the Midday Rotary a couple of weeks ago, and she was the program and presenter. And I think that what she is up to is really amazing and going to be awesome for our town. And so with that, Elizabeth, I'm going to welcome you and give you the floor.
Okay, I just want to do a quick sound check and make sure. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes,
ma'am.
Great. All right. So thank you, Mayor McLeod and Council, for allowing me to speak at this evening's meeting. I've already had the pleasure of presenting to Mayor Jody McLeod, Councilman Avery Everett, and Councilman Michael Granis, and I'm honored to be able to present to the Town Council now. In the aftermath of the brutal murder of George Floyd and the subsequent dialogue regarding racial injustice, I made the decision to found the Racial Equality Coalition of Clayton, North Carolina. I'm a relatively new resident to the town of Clayton and have been taking this time to learn about our town's history and current racial climate. I've heard over and over from several residents how far Clayton has come in terms of diversity and inclusiveness in the last 10 to 20 years. And most I have spoken with, including myself, are proud to live here and have had many positive experiences, both personally and professionally. That being said, I've also had residents share with me incidents where they've encountered racism directed at themselves or someone else. Some have shared lifelong experiences of inequality they've grown accustomed to in our healthcare, education, housing, and criminal justice systems. Often when we talk about racism, we think of overt racism involving obviously derogatory language, threatening acts of violence, and other deplorable abusive behavior fueled by prejudice and hate. This form of racism is easy to spot, easy to call out, and for the most part, we can all agree on how monstrous and inexcusable it is. The murder of George Floyd would fall into this category. When we begin to talk about microaggressions, the consensus is less clear. The very nature of microaggression is that it's used by one group and directed at another. It's behavior and language that has become so commonplace and socially acceptable that those using it often aren't even aware of its negative impact. And that's where the danger lies. Every one of us walks around with implicit bias. It would be nearly impossible to not have them. Our bias are shaped by our upbringing, social groups, geography, media, and experiences. Implicit bias are subconscious, so we walk around hardly aware of their existence or impact on how we perceive the world. Microaggressions are the manifestation of implicit bias. These microaggressions and implicit bias are a form of racism that has not just survived the changing times, but has been allowed to flourish. It exists within our education, healthcare, criminal justice, and government institutions, and is marginalizing people of color. It exists within policies designed to exclude, or at the very least, discourage people of color. The Racial Equality Coalition of Clayton, North Carolina, has made it our mission to promote fair and equal treatment of all members of our community. We acknowledge embedded racism and racist policies within various institutions and believe it's our responsibility to address these injustices through education and advocating for reform. We encourage conversations about race and racism and believe that through these conversations, we can begin to develop a deeper understanding of one another and the issues at hand. We aren't a political organization, and we do welcome all members of our community, no matter their race, to join our efforts. We believe that all institutions warrant constant evaluation to ensure the needs of our community are being met and all voices are being heard. We are not okay with accepting the status quo because it's comfortable or familiar. We believe in challenging points of view, expanding our breadth of knowledge, and asking questions. We seek to highlight the humanity in each other and use that as a jumping off point to first listen to what others have to say before sharing our own perspective. I feel it's worth noting that while we can all acknowledge that we have different experiences and that some of those differences are due to race, It also means that we live in differing realities because of this. Each reality is real for the person living in it. Just because one person's reality isn't our own doesn't make it less real. If we can approach one another with this understanding, I believe we can be more compassionate in our responses and be more open to the idea of change. I would challenge everyone to intentionally speak with someone whose beliefs differ from yours, but do it with a spirit of humility, and you might be surprised what you discover. I know I've been. My hope is that the Racial Equality Coalition can be the basis for strengthening personal and professional ties within our community, that we can break down barriers and exemplify what true equality looks like. I consider myself blessed to be a resident of Clayton and to have had the opportunity to meet so many people committed to making a difference both in Clayton and our world. Thank you all again for the chance to speak with you this evening. Thank you for listening and being receptive, and prayers for all of you as you do your best to navigate these hard times while staying strong and leading our community forward. Thank you.
Awesome. Elizabeth, thank you so much. And I'll now turn it over to council if you have any questions or comments.
Mr. Mayor, I have a comment, if I may.
Mr. Granis.
Ms. McCullough, I want to thank you very much, and also thank your board for what you're doing. It's my belief that you have already made a difference, and for that I'm very excited. And as I had mentioned to you previously, if there's anything that I can do to help support the coalition, you know that I'm very happy to do that. So, and thank you for your presentation tonight.
Thank you, Michael Granis. I appreciate it.
Yes, this is Avery Everett. Elizabeth, I just want to say it has been an amazing, just hearing your presentation, before and now. It's I'm so happy to have you here, and you have my full support. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Avery. I appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to address Ms. McCullough.
Mr. Thompson.
I just want to tell you how nice it is to put the face with the name. And I've already heard great things about you and what you're doing. And we're just glad that you're, number one, glad you moved to Clayton and that you're a part of our community. And we're thankful for what you bring to the table to contribute to our community, and look forward to what you and the coalition and everyone can do together to help advance Clayton into to a place where we all need to be with regard to equality. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ms. McCullough, I hadn't met you before until now, but thank you. Very good presentation tonight. And we really do appreciate you coming forward and stepping up in the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So thank you again, Elizabeth, for joining us and for the great work you're doing in our community. I think it's pretty obvious that we as a town council and we as individuals are definitely here to promote and support you and this entity in any way that we can. So please, stay connected and reach out and let us know how we can be, in service to the overall goal and the mission of what you guys have going on, because it's awesome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you. And again, your receptiveness for all of this. One of the reasons why I love being a part of this community. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Up next on your agenda is the second quarter 2020 update of the new Neuse River WFR project. And I believe that we're giving the floor to Mr. J.D. Solomon.
Right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
And Stacy, I believe you're going to advance the film for me, the slides. Maybe Heidi. Somebody out there will advance them, I guess. I'll ask them to.
You will.
Okay, I start off. One is we're trying to make sure we brief you guys officially at council meetings every quarter, just to kind of give you progress. So this is the first and only meeting in July, so this kind of brings us up through the end of June. I'll give you some of the standard slides that I think are important at every meeting, that we go back about what the project is and why we're doing it. But first, I just want to say four things really. Program remains on budget and schedule. Major risk and issues right now, we are still waiting on local government commission approval. Again, I'll talk about this more in a minute. We're still waiting on final funding, which we will be now for the next year probably, but just always important to have on our radar screen. And then one thing we really had on our map, but didn't really fully anticipate it, but we are having a residential growth boom kind of during a pandemic. So that is one of those things that we're having to watch, as well as our industrial growth. We're also having to watch our residential growth now. So more about that in a few minutes, but a couple of slides I'll go through quickly. First, I'd like to talk about this slide. Obviously, we're all from Clayton, so we know where we're at, but we're easily to be blamed as a bedroom community to Raleigh, which we are right across the county line. But we also, I like to remind people, we do have a booming kind of commercial and industrial base, really with Grifols and Novo, and are the basis for even more growth in the future. So anything we do kind of has to be balanced between that bedroom residential community, protecting our environment, and then the commercial and industrial growth we have. Next slide. We do have a very proactive master plan and planning type function in the town. I've been part of that for 20 some odd years, as some of you guys have been too. And so we are trying to, as I'd say over the years, to keep up, but with the exception of 08 and 09, we've kind of been in a boom economy. And what we're seeing is, as I said before, our blessings can be curses, but a lot of people would like to have our problems right now, because while some areas are hurting, we're doing very well. So next slide. I like to talk about our team, and one of the things that we can kind of check off is that second one there is our nutrient credit advisory. We've had two of the best firms in the business to help us with that, and I think you guys are going to be seeing some approvals for some credit purchases. So that's finally coming to a point. And that really, as I've talked to Mayor McCullough about it in particular, that really is going to help us spread this growth to the future of Clayton for 20 to 50 years with the kinds of nutrients we're purchasing now to really set the stage. And that is the one part of this vision that we have to have that other communities around us struggle with. Rich Coppola and staff, and of course Adam supporting all of us, we've really worked hard to get this nutrient thing under control, and we've done some things that other people haven't been able to do. So all that's very, very good. Next slide. We talked about the RTZ, so I won't talk about it anymore, but I will say that the one thing that's always tough with an infrastructure program is when you have a very vibrant industrial base, it continues to grow. And both Grifols and Novo are continuing to grow. They've each sunk about $2 billion in the community. There are other people out there, other pharmaceuticals, and there's people like Caterpillar, so I don't want to slight anybody, but we do have a very, very powerful job creation machine here and a very good quality of life because of that. Next slide. Talk about projects under pressure and doing design build of projects. I like to mention this slide because if you remember our pre-treatment plant that's now coming online that we worked on, the regional pre-treatment plant. This plant that we're talking about is final treatment. This was pre-treatment. But if I remind everybody, this was really just something that came along in 2016. So it really went from concept through construction in about 4 years. And that's about what we're trying to do here with this new facility. Next slide, please. You guys have seen this. This is a good reminder. We will have a public meeting on Wednesday night. We're going to do it similar to what we did with the blood drive. We're going to have some stations at Town Hall. I'm not sure how many people will come with the COVID issues, but we want to make it a place where we can come in and the public can get some more information. But we will have things like our alignment and our key issues that we can talk about. And Stacy's going to, and her staff are going to work with us to create a video. So the folks that can't come will be able to put some stuff on a video and be able to show that for people to have access to it. So we're looking forward to that on Wednesday night. Next slide. I like to always tell the story, and you guys know this story, but it's always important to say in the public, we built this current plant in the 1950s, and we have done everything we could for more than a decade to keep it on life support and keep it going. And She's finally kind of given up on us now. So rather than invest more money into this plant, which has a limited footprint, prone to flooding, it's just going to take a whole lot of money to add on to it again or develop it again. It's better to find a new site. Next slide. Why now? I mentioned some of that, but also some things that are happening. Both Johnston County and the city of Raleigh, where we have wholesale contracts. Both of those entities are trying to grow. They're also raising their rates, and they're also raising their rates substantially to their wholesale customers. And so at this point, we've talked about long-term partnerships, and we'll continue to have those. But we're in a position where we have to take care of ourselves at this point. Next slide. And then, of course, with y'all's approval, we talked about this back in February and January. We are phasing this. We have a 10 million gallon plant. Keep in mind, our existing plant is 2.5 million gallons. So this will be 5 times bigger at its build out. But at this point, we're only going to build about 6 million gallons per day. So it's kind of cost effectively staged. We really can't do much less than 6. That'll run out in less than 10 years. But that's about what we can afford. And of course, you guys have all gone through the budget cycle and the necessary rate increases and whatnot, which the community is appreciative of. But our goal of the program is to try to keep all this within a budget that the town can afford and everybody in the council can feel like we're spending the right money at the right time. So that's where we're at there. And then, of course, one of the drivers here is the environment. 2 things. One, our technology of the existing plant really will not protect the environment in the future, where the regulations are now and where they're going. So with this growing demand, we're going to have to build a better plant with new technologies. And we're also going to get it out of the floodplain. This new site will be out of the floodplain and on high ground. And so the public can rest assured that we won't be, the potential for any kind of overflows will be very small as we go forward. Next slide. So this is about the program delivery, and this is boring stuff, but I want to show it and keep it in the record. This program is really a collection of 4 different projects, 2 force mains or sewer lines that will move. One will move it from the existing Little Creek plant across town to the new site, which is the Neuse 2 pump station area. The other one will move it from the industrial area southeast of town up to the same location. We'll also need to build a water line, road and a water line there with an early grading package as well. Those projects are all being kind of in that tradition of design, bid, build. And then, of course, our big plant, the big plant itself, based on the schedule, will need to be a design build project similar to what we use and we're part of for the pretreatment. Next slide. So I won't read this slide to you guys, but the progress to date, I gave this just as a comprehensive slide to add on to what we had before. And I ran out of room. Such good news through May of 2020, early May of 2020. And then for the next slide, if we will, this is kind of the, you guys read that for a second. And then if we'll go to the next slide. This gets us through June 15th of 2020. So just for update, to give you a few slides here. One, our environmental assessment and our engineering report were submitted to the state. That's a big milestone. The state is in the process of review. Again, currently that is on schedule as far as moving through their system, and the state's been very accommodating in that. I've mentioned to y'all before that there were some discussions about nutrient credits and nutrients issues, and Representative Donna White and some of our other legislative delegation, Senator Horner, and others on the Senate side as well as the House side, Representative Strickland in support with Representative White, worked through the Farm Bill and with some of the leadership there with Senator Brent Jackson, and some of those nutrient issues were clarified. So we've put that in for application to a permit modification that's ongoing now. You guys approved the wastewater rates at the town council and the budget, which was big. Our firing range, we had a pre-bid conference last week, and we've got quite a few interested bidders to do the remediation there. The bad news, probably the kick in the gut, is we got our first $30 million low interest loan from the state, but we didn't get our second. I understand Johnston County didn't get theirs. And I also understand from the state that they had a record number of applicants this time. Don't know if that's COVID or what that may be, but there's a lot of interest there. So we were outside the bubble. We have 3 other sources of funding, and so this should not be a problem at this point. But that was, the hope was to get another $30 million in this round. The other concerning news, as I mentioned, we are meeting with the local government commission, but they do want some agreements with our largest customers to enable the town to borrow the money. And so we're working through those issues now. I think that's good progress, and we've all been very active with that. But that is more good news than bad, but it is one of our risks as well. And then, as I mentioned before, we are seeing quite a substantial uptick in residential and commercial development. So we are working to update master plans as we speak, give you guys a better assessment of what we need and the timing of what we need. Next slide. I got 2 more, I think. So this kind of gets us down, boil it all down. We have a risk register. A list of risks we've been monitoring since the project started. We usually don't see rare events, and we certainly didn't think a pandemic would be one of those rare events, but we have experienced a rare event. It wasn't a hurricane, it wasn't a tornado, it wasn't a fire, but we did have a pandemic, which was a rare event. So we've kept moving through that rare event, and we've done it well. Our other project-related risk, as I mentioned before, the first 2, and then the third is residential growth. One of the things I'll stop and say here is the action items here, I guess threefold, is we were close. And I told you guys back in the first quarter that one of you asked me, how close were we? And I said, we're going to be close as far as timing. And now I can tell you we're going to be real close. In fact, we thought we may have some breathing room with the pandemic, but because of our growth, basically what has happened is we're moving upward, not downward during the pandemic. So what the town staff has done, I've asked them to do it. Rich and I are working together with staff, planning and engineering. Josh has been working very diligently at this, but to go back and re-true up all our wastewater demands from the residential and light commercial side, and to bring us back some numbers that we can present to you guys probably at the next meeting. There is one rezoning request tonight, but it is not impacted by these decisions or where we're at with our growth or with our wastewater capacity. But I can also tell you with the applications we've seen in the recent weeks, we are right at probably to expire. If all of this came through at the right time, we would run out of wastewater capacity allocation. So we have enough for now. It's going to be a tough future. So one of the things we're doing is recalculating all the numbers, and we're also going to go back and look at timing, because it's not just when you get close on the massive numbers in the hundreds of thousands of gallons, you need to go back and verify what years they're actually occurring in. And some of these projects have been around a long time, and some of these projects have rosy hopes of what they're going to do, but we need to read through and make sure what flows in each year so that we can give you all the best number. Now, we have talked, and we'll talk next week, Adam, the manager, and Rich, the engineering director, will all be speaking with you guys next week about other policy changes we could do or exactly where we're at. But we have good numbers right now, but we don't have full numbers, so I'm hesitant to give you a number. And then, of course, some other important things that we have in the next month. We will need to spend millions of dollars to buy credits and put them in permits. Put the big purchase of over $7 million into a permit. So there's some timing and some public comment periods and those things that go with that. We also have our environmental assessment that we're trying to get approval for. And there's some fine tuning that will be there in public hearings and workshops on that. And then, as always, it's a big project. It's the biggest project in the history of the town. We need to continue to have your support and the general public understanding and support, and what's really a lot of moving parts and not a lot of slack as far as the time we have to get it done in. And so that's kind of where we stand. I think that's our last slide. I may have more, some milestones I think I've already covered, but I think I'll stop here and just let you guys ask me some questions. My time is probably done. So, Mr. Mayor?
Okay, JD, thank you so much. That was a great update. Council, any questions or comments from council? I cannot see everybody's face on the screen, but if you have a question or a comment, just speak up.
Mr. Mayor, it's Michael.
Mr. Granis.
Just a couple of questions. JD, well, first of all, thank you for the update. Very informative. Most of it sounds pretty encouraging, which is a good thing. But one of the questions I had is, do you know offhand what the statute of limitations is for activities to start in order to retain the allocations that we've already distributed or committed to?
That is an outstanding question, and I don't know the specific legal side of that. You may have to ask the lawyers or maybe ask Samantha. But I do know from dealing with these in other places for a long time, including Clayton, that it really depends on your ordinance. And so some of these, really what you do in the process is go back to everybody you've granted something to, and you see where they're at. And it may be very old, and they may just say, oh, we don't even worry about it. We didn't even have it. In other cases, they will dig in, and you've got to look at the legal aspects and the ordinance aspects. But I think you've done some things in the past where you've made people pay in advance, or you've only given them a certain amount of time to use the allocations. And that's one of those policy things you're probably going to have to move back to.
Okay. The other question I had was, with the LGC not giving us the 30 million, what sort of a setback, if at all, is that for us with respect to our overall timeline?
I don't think it's a factor at this point. And it was the state revolving fund. It's interesting. You make a good point. The state can give you money in the loan, the $30 million, the SRF, but then the LGC, which is the Local Government Commission, even though the state's giving you the money, the loan, you can't take the loan out until the LGC approves it. So we've actually got $30 million sitting there, but the argument or debate we're having with LGC now is the conditions at which they'll let us borrow the money. In fact, they're a harder banker than most bankers are. And so I think the SRF money, the state revolving fund, was our first choice because it's the easier path. And it's really good for the state too. It's a low interest loan, but they take that money from us. They make 2% on it. And then other communities, especially less fortunate communities that are struggling, have access to money that we're turning over and making money for the state. And so it's really a good way to work it. We can go to the bond market. We can go through a federal program called WIFIA, which is a Water Infrastructure Fund financing. All those are our options. And then we can go through Economic Development Authority grants, which we've got a grant in now, and we should hear about that this month. So we've got 4 options. SRF was just the glide path, and now we're going to have to work a little bit harder on the other 3. But right now, it's not a problem because we've got the money to get us to the spring, if the LGC will let us borrow it. But by the spring, we'll have to solidify the money, so to speak.
Okay. And then just a short comment. I believe in your presentation, you mentioned that Clayton is the bedroom community of Raleigh. I've always heard it to be that Raleigh is the bedroom community of Clayton.
Well stated. Well stated. I may have said perceived. I meant to say perceived to be because we sit on the border. But yeah, I've been here a long time too, and I take deference to that when they say we're a bedroom community. But people do forget about our great commercial and industrial base we have here too.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Anyone else? Questions or comments? All right. Hearing none. JD, again, thank you so much. You're doing an outstanding job for us. We appreciate all the hard work and effort and from you and, you know, really the whole team here at the town hall and moving this forward as
If I
best
may,
we can and as quickly.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I'll tell you what, the staff, every department I think is working on this project in one way or another. And our state agencies have been good with their influence, and Representative White and our legislative delegation, as I think you guys know, have been very helpful as well. So all around, thank you for your support, and we'll keep fighting the good fight. Thank you.
Thank you, JD. All right, up next is our public hearing. It's the 2020-17-RZ tract on Powhatan Road. And I'll give the floor to Samantha Wullenwaber, our planning director.
Good evening, Samantha Wullenwaber, Planning Director. As the mayor stated, this is rezoning 2020-17-RZ, and the request is to rezone a property on Powhatan Road from RE to I1. The property size is approximately 22 acres, and it is approximately 1,200 feet west of the Mohican Trail, and it abuts Powhatan Road. As you can see, it does back up all the way to Hogan Lane, and the property to the left of this one, as you're looking at the aerial on the screen, is owned by Griffles, and there's some other individual ownership of properties surrounding all sides. And you can see across Powhatan Road, that is the new Novo plant. Next slide. Thank you. Again, the property is zoned RE currently, and they would like to rezone the property to industrial. And as you can see, it would not be considered spot zoning, one, because there is I-1 directly across the street, and any sort of right-of-way body of water, is not considered. So it automatically, technically abuts I-1. So, and then the next slide, we'll talk about the comprehensive plan. And again, that's a street view of the site. Again, it is a vacant field, and there actually is a cemetery on the property. It is shown on the survey that was submitted for the rezoning. And currently, we did get some public comment about the cemetery, which Ms. Moffitt will read into the record. But at this time, that is not something that the town staff will, they generally don't get involved in that. And that is something that the property owner and the cemetery owners, that's something they would work out. But I did want to brief on that because you will hear public comment regarding that in just a few minutes. All right, so the consistency with a comprehensive plan 2040, it is consistent with the future land use map. Our comprehensive plan was adopted in 2015, and it is designated as employment center. So if you ask what employment center is, the comprehensive plan definition generally states that it provides locations for primary employment, economic opportunities, usually located along a major transportation corridor. And Powhatan Road at this time is not a major transportation corridor, but it abuts Highway 70, where a lot of this industrial growth is coming from. But that is in the definition of employment center. So that is why you may have seen the major transportation corridor, that language. I would also discuss if there's adequate infrastructure, if it abuts a rail, which this does have a railroad near it, and some uses that would be considered employment center, industrial, warehouse, office, research and development, tech, assembly, any sort of hospital, and even some limited support services as commercial. And again, this is not what the actual permitted uses are, but this is what the employment center designation is in our comprehensive plan 2040. And staff does recommend approval of the rezoning request, and the planning board also recommended approval of the rezoning request, and this was presented in May and then voted on in June at the June planning board meeting. At this time, we are not aware of any immediate plans for the property. I believe the applicant will be on the call in a few minutes. And I'll be more than happy to go over a few uses that would be allowed on industrial. So it could be anything from government service, a school, entertainment, indoor or outdoor, fitness, contractor's office, a brewery, pawn shop, self-storage, vehicle repair, manufacturing, So there's a multitude of different uses that are allowed in the industrial district. So if this property was rezoned, then all of those uses would be permitted. Those are just the permitted. There is some conditional and special uses as well in the use table. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Hey, Samantha, this is Avery Everett. I just have a few questions for you. So, when the applicants were, kind of talking at the public or kind of talking with the surrounding people that live around that area, was there any responses to their questions?
From the neighborhood meeting?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
We'll have to ask the applicant. Mr. David Oranger should be on the call, and whenever he presents, he can address those comments about what was discussed at the neighborhood meeting, and any follow-up questions or anything like that they were supposed to address.
Okay. I just have one more. So there were a lot of objections to this rezoning in that area. So what do you think? Why should we proceed with that, even though residents around that area are not so favorable of that?
That's a great question. So planning, we go by a number of different things. We go by the uses. We also, our development is guided and our growth is by the comprehensive plan 2040. And as you know, right now we're in just beginning stages of updating our comp plan. So I'm sure this area will be another area that we will look at in depth. Really, we're looking at the entire town in depth, but a lot of areas have changed over the last 5 years. And we have places on the comprehensive plan, future land use map, that are shown as something, and the council has actually voted against it just because of the growth, and it just wasn't predicted when this plan was adopted in 2015. So comprehensive plans, they've been around since the early 1900s. There was legislation in the 1930s regarding funding for them, and then some more through housing acts and to help communities plan their communities. This is how we guide our decisions as a planning department. So the comp plan and a strategic plan, those are neighborhood plans, all those different types of things help us to make our decisions. And since this did have employment center, that is one reason that we did go along with it, and it abuts two very large industrial zone properties and industrial use properties.
Okay,
Does that answer your question, or did I make it more confusing?
Oh, no, not at all. You answered it. Thank you so much, Samantha.
Samantha, I got one for you. What's the sewer capacity out there for this type of use?
Well, I don't think they have a specific use for the property. It was my understanding that they were rezoning it to industrial to match the surrounding area. Obviously not the residential on the other side, but moving back towards 70, that industrial area. So I would have to ask Joshua or Rich if they are on the call, if they know the sewer capacity in this area. But we obviously do serve Novo and Griffles at this time.
So is it continuous with the industrial land use out there or not?
Yes. They have. So if you look at the the aerial doesn't show it in the street view, but thank you, Stacy. You go back one. Yep, there we go. Right there. So the property, I'm pointing at my screen like y'all can see me, but the property just back towards 70 on the left hand side of this one, going to the west, that actually is owned by Griffles. And there's the church, and then all that land back in the back is also owned by Griffles. And then Novo is right across the street for their new facility.
So basically, we're just rezoning just to help for marketing purposes only?
Well, the rezoning request would be for any of the uses in the industrial district, but at this time, I do not think they have an actual use or proposed use for the site, but I would ask the applicant that when they present.
So, but you see what I'm asking, we're just doing this for a marketing purpose. It may not go as an industrial site, and we may have to rezone it back to something else. Is that what that could happen, correct?
Well, I'm not sure what the intent of the applicant is. I don't want to put words in their mouth and say it's for marketing purposes, but I'll give you, let's work on a couple different scenarios. So say that the property is rezoned to I-1, and then a use comes in and they want to do something else that's not allowed in that district, either permitted or special use or conditional use, which we're doing away with conditional, but then they would have to rezone to something else, which that's happened before to rezone properties, depending on the change in the growth in the area. Or it could be that, say that if the rezoning was denied, not tonight because we have to wait the 24-hour rule. So this is just the public hearing tonight. It'll be heard again in the next council meeting for deliberation and a vote. So say the rezoning was denied, then you have to wait a certain amount of time before it can be heard again. So that may limit the property owner if this was denied for any future development within a certain amount of time, because you have to have either a substantial change in the zoning and what you're applying for, or wait a certain period of time. Does that help?
Yeah. Basically what you're saying, it'd be smart on the applicant to wait until he's got a good bite. Because if we turn it down, he's gonna have to wait a year to get it rezoned again, what you're saying.
Correct, to apply again. Yes.
Thank you.
And I will say, just as you all know, we're working on 160D, which is the legislation that we have to incorporate into our unified code of ordinances. And part of that, we are going to be, if the council wishes, doing conditional zoning. So conditional zoning, it's very similar to rezoning, but we would rezone. So say for a property like this, you would go from residential estate to I-1 CZD. And then it would be, you would list the uses that would be allowed on that property, and only those uses would be allowed. It's very similar to a special use district, and we still have special use districts in Clayton. But by the end of the year, we should have conditional zoning in place, because our goal is to have 160D adopted and all those changes made. So that is going to be another tool in our toolbox to use for properties like this, where you have pretty heavy industrial on one side, but then you still have a lot of residential that needs to be preserved, and we need to maintain the balance of all the citizens and businesses in our community. So that is something that we can use to help with that.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Bunn, if I might jump in there while this is Catherine Ross, town attorney, since Samantha opened the door, just to remind the council as you consider this, this is a rezoning request to a general district, which means that the applicant would be able, if the rezoning was successful, to use the property for any of the permitted uses. You can't limit that or condition that. They would be able to use the property by right for any of the permitted uses in the new zoning district. They would have to come for a use permit for any uses that so required that at this time.
Sorry, any other questions? If not, I'm going to give the floor to the applicant.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Mr. Bernice.
This is for Samantha. I'm looking at page 37 of our agenda, and there's 4 maps there that are there. One that says current zoning map, and it does depict the property in question here, and everything around it, with the exception of across Powhatan Road, I'm assuming based on this map, is currently zoned RE. Is that correct? Upper left is the map I'm referring to.
You may have to unmute.
Oh, I've been talking for like 5 minutes without.
I figured you were, but I thought, well, maybe she's not. Maybe it's technical difficulty.
No, I was telling Stacy thank you, and I was just going on and on. I'm sorry. So everything, as you can see to the right, is residential estate. And then obviously the large pink would be the industrial. And the reason it's not considered spot zoning is because of the property at Novo that is industrial, that is across the right of way. Generally, annexation, zoning, those type of things don't take right of ways and bodies of water into consideration. It's considered abutting. So that is the instance on that. Obviously, if it was 95 or 40, that would maybe a little bit of a different situation, but there is residential around on both sides. And that is something to consider, but due to the future land use map designating all of that area as employment center, and the industrial across the street, then that is why the staff felt comfortable with the recommending approval of the rezoning.
Okay. You pretty much, I think, answered another question I had in the agenda. Powhatan was noted as a major transportation corridor, and I spent a little bit of time looking for a definition of that, but you kind of took care of my concern. It's really not considered that at this juncture, but the reason I guess the comment was made is because it is reasonably close to Highway 70. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir. I would make that assumption. And also in the employment center definition in the comprehensive plan, it specifically states along a major transportation corridor. So that's probably where the language was pulled from as well.
Okay. I understand the terminology with respect to the property being adjacent to existing I-1, but I have some heartburn with that because it's across the street. And I do have some heartburn with respect to the rezoning of this property because currently everything around it, immediately adjacent to it, is RE. And then we were not made aware, I think, until maybe today with respect to the cemetery. And I'd be very interested to hear about that because I think there are some requirements that I'm not familiar with that relate to specific requirements to relocate a cemetery. So it would be interesting to hear from the applicant pertaining to that as well. That's all I have.
Okay. Yes, we all will ask them to address that. Hopefully they are on the call and they're hearing all of this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Samantha.
Mr. Oringer, I'll give you the floor and you'll need to unmute yourself.
All right. Can you hear me, Jody?
Yes, sir.
Okay. My video may not be on. Let's see here, start video. There we go.
There we go.
All right. Well, thank you, council, for considering the rezoning of my property. I am excited that this tract of land is in the vision of the 2040 comprehensive plan to serve as an employment center. And honestly, that's been my whole base of proceeding. You know, at this time, I do not have an end user because I felt like it would be more better suited if I was to go ahead and rezone to I-1 like the Novo plants are that are around me. Granted, there are a couple properties that is RE on both sides of me. Griffles does own one of those parcels. And I just have to assume that if Griffles wanted to become I-1, that would not be an issue. Again, we do join across the street of Novo, and I think it's a great spot and a great property. And for the vision of Clayton has it going that direction with an employment center, and we want to be a part of that. As far as the graveyard is concerned, you know, I haven't done a lot of research on that. I know exactly where it is. It's 4 or 6 graves. I don't have any details. You can move a cemetery. You definitely have to jump through some hoops to make it happen, but it is possible, and it does happen all the time. And like I said, it's a 4 or 6 person type of cemetery if that was to ever become a issue. I think Clayton, as we talked earlier, Clayton is growing like crazy. I think it's crazy not to think that that area is, as already specified, as an employment center, that we are not going against that. We're trying to be a part of that, just like the vision and the town has requested. You know, and we've gotten the support of staff and the planning board to get to this point in the process. As far as the question about the minutes of the concerns of the folks that are around there, I'm going to pull up on my computer the neighborhood meeting summary, and there were 7 concerns, and I'm going to just read those right down the list. Other concerns were 1, dust control, existing construction from Novo. Number 2, noise and vibration from Novo. You know, there's nothing I can say about Novo. It looks to me like it's a beautiful facility and it's going to be an asset to our community. One of the concerns was Powhatan Road traffic. I can see where that could be a concern for folks that live there. When you have ever how many folks Novo's employing, a couple thousand, you know, I can understand that the Powhatan Road traffic could be a concern, but that's nothing that's going to, that this project has to do with. Larry Smith and the Scotts do not want to be surrounded by an industrial park. You know, I understand. You know, you walk out of their front door and they're looking at Novo's massive facility. I understand. It's already there. Michael Carmen would like the stream buffer to be larger and had questions about the wildlife being displaced. You know, the stream behind the property is a great property breaker between us and a neighborhood. Number 6, Jesse Scott site plan needs to monitor light pollution. I think that monitoring light pollution is a great idea, and that should be part of all plan submittal and discussion and all that, you know. Number 7, decreased home values of surrounding homes. David Oringer will get a real estate appraiser to give a statement on the value. I had Mark Jones sit in, make a statement. He's a commercial real estate appraiser out of Smithfield from Clayton, and he has the thoughts and the history that it's going to increase property values in that area, and so do I. And that was all the questions that were asked in the neighborhood meeting summary.
Okay, thank you, David. Are there any questions or comments for David?
Mr. Mayor, I have 1 or 2 questions, if I may.
Mr. Granis.
Mr. Orringer, are you aware of the property that Griffiths owns that is adjacent to this parcel, possibly being an animal habitat? And if so, what their intentions might be with that?
Well, I have seen the sign, and if you have a definition of what they're doing, then we'll all know. But I don't know. I just saw the sign.
Okay.
What do you think that is?
Well, I'm not sure, but that's on my list of things to do. The next question is, I have a great deal of respect for Mark Jones. And I know that he referred to the property where that's across the street from Sheets and the surrounding area with respect to his part of his analyses. The problem that I have with that is obviously that borders Highway 70.
Oh, yeah.
And the difference here is that we're probably, I'll say maybe 3/4 of a mile to a mile away from 70. And for me, I think the value certainly will increase, I think, but I'm not so convinced that it would increase to the level that we saw where the Sheets property is. And that I have no way of proving that at this juncture. I've not talked to a commercial appraiser, which is something I would like to do. But thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, hearing no further comments from council, I will open the public hearing and turn it over to the town clerk to read some comments for the public comment section.
Thank you, sir. We have received a total of 4 public comments from 4 separate people, and I will start with first comments from Larry and Linda Smith. In an email dated Thursday, July 16th, they wrote, "We would like to provide written comments on subject for the July 20th Town Council meeting. The comments we have are those previously expressed before the Planning Board via letter March 14th, in the virtual public hearing on May 26th, and by follow-up email comments of May 27th. Attached to this email is a copy of those letters, which also reflect the comments made in the May 26th virtual public meeting. They ask that we please have this email, attached letter, and attached emails read into the council's public hearing record at tonight's meeting. Even though this rezoning request has been approved by the Planning Board, we wish to reiterate our strong opposition to this requested change for all of the reasons set forth in our previous correspondence. We feel the Planning Board had already made up its mind to approve this rezoning prior to its public hearing and did not give our concerns and opposition the appropriate consideration. Therefore, we are requesting that the Town Council override the Planning Board's decision and disapprove this requested rezoning. Thank you, Larry and Linda Smith." I will now read into the record their letter dated March 14th, which was addressed to the Planning Board. "I attended the March 4th, 2020 neighborhood meeting held by Mr. Kirk Lee at True Line Surveying. At this meeting, I expressed my and my wife's objections to this rezoning request. Also in attendance, along with others, were my next-door neighbor and sister, Mrs. Teresa Scott, and her husband, Jesse. Mrs. Scott has sent a letter dated March 6, 2020, to the Planning Board setting forth several objections that she has to this proposed rezoning. My wife and I are not in total agreement with Mrs. Scott's objections. We had planned on attending the Planning Board March 23rd meeting to present our objections to this proposed rezoning in person. However, due to our age, health, and current situation with the COVID-19 virus, we feel that we should not be attending any meetings at this time. Therefore, we are requesting that you take this letter under consideration in lieu of an oral presentation from us. As stated previously, we are opposing this rezoning to I-1. Since Novo Nordisk has and are continuing to build across the road from our property, there has been a tremendous increase in noise, dust, vibrations to our house, and the traffic on Powhatan Road is now very bad. When I cross the road to my mailbox, I nearly always have to wait for numerous vehicles to pass by, and at times it is really a dangerous situation. If this rezoning is approved, then my sister and my residence properties would be 3/4 surrounded by industry. I believe this would have a severe negative impact on our residential property values. Also, there is only one other large, about 15 acres, piece of property adjacent to this proposed rezoning parcel before reaching the neighborhood of Powhatan Glen. And if this rezoning is approved, it is only a matter of time before I believe this other property would also be requested for rezoning. If that happens, my sister's and my residential properties will be completely surrounded 360 degrees by industry. Also, the applicant has not stated any intended use for this property if it is rezoned. Could it be something in the I-1 zoning that may be offensive to neighbors? It is our understanding that if this rezoning request is approved, any use listed in I-1 zoning could be put on this property. There are many uses listed in the I-1 zoning that we would not want next door to our family, and we feel other neighbors, like those in Powhatan Glen, would not want this neighborhood either. Again, we want to reiterate our opposition to this rezoning request and ask that the planning board recommend denial of this application to the town council. We also ask that this letter be included in the records pertaining to the subject rezoning request. Sincerely, Larry and Linda Smith. I will now read the letter dated May 27th. Thank you for the opportunity of participating in the virtual public hearing held on May 26th on subject. Mr. Jeff Keynes, town planner, stated at the outset of the meeting that the staff recommends approval of this request. So it is obvious that the planning staff had already made up its mind before hearing any public comments. But I do appreciate the opportunity to express my concerns with the rezoning request and hope that the board will see fit to reject this rezoning in spite of the planning staff's position. Some of our concerns were set forth in our letter of March 4th, which was read into the record by the clerk. We apologize for our letter not being addressed properly. At the time, we sent the letter to those names who were shown for the ETJ members of the planning board on the town's website. We do request that Ms. Freeman make sure all current board members have a copy of that 3/14/20 letter and public hearing my concern for that adjoining property west, north, and east of this property is all zoned RE. Mr. Keynes has stated that the proposed rezoning was consistent with the lands west of this property, and that is incorrect. Therefore, none of the adjoining property on the north side of Powhatan property road is zoned I-1. This appears to me to be spot or leapfrog zoning. This was one of the main reasons rezoning of this property was not recommended by the planning board in 2014. At that time, they also found that this proposed rezoning would not be compatible with the surrounding properties. The only physical changes that have occurred in this area since 2014 is that even more single-family housing has been added east along Powhatan Road, and Novo is building its new facility across Powhatan Road from our property and the subject property. At least now, Powhatan Road provides some separation between Novo's south side industrial property and the RE properties on the north side of the road. If this rezoning is approved, there will no longer be any separation. During the public hearing, the only real reason I heard that the requested rezoning should be allowed is that it is in line with the comprehensive plan of 2040. I am just a regular county citizen and did not even know about the 2040 plan until this rezoning request. I know I did not have any input into this plan, and I doubt seriously that any of my neighbors did either. What changed between 2014 and 2015? Novo's planned expansion? While we were not particularly happy that they were building across the road, we didn't object to it because of the great good they could do for a lot of people with their products. But the noise, dust, vibrations, and traffic have been much worse than we ever imagined. Hopefully, once construction is completed, this will finally improve. Please keep Powhatan Road as a separation between the I-1 and RE zoned properties from Novo's original facility eastward by not approving this requested rezoning. The only other reason for rezoning this property at this time would be to enhance Mr. Oranger's return on his investment in this property. According to the numbers I know of and have heard tossed about, Mr. Oranger stands to obtain approximately an 800% return on his original investment if this rezoning is approved. While that would be great for Mr. Oranger, our property and others is not vacant property, and the greater value is in my 12-year-old home, not my less than 2 acres of land. This proposed rezoning will have a significant negative personal financial impact on our property and the property of others. For all the previously stated and above reasons, we respectfully request that the planning board disapprove this rezoning request. Sincerely, Larry and Linda Smith. Received public comments number 2. I will read those. This is from email dated July 16th. Please find attached 2 documents that we would like read into this public comments for the July 20th, 2020 Town Council meeting. These documents reflect our previous comments to the planning board. These documents will express a strong opposition to the rezoning request made by Mr. Oranger. Although the planning board has approved this rezoning request, we respectfully ask that the town council disapprove this rezoning request and override their decision. We feel the planning board had already decided to rezone this property before the meeting was held, and did not give our various concerns the proper consideration or attention. Thank you, Teresa and Jesse Scott. The letter dated March 6th. On March 4th, 2020, my husband and I attended a neighborhood meeting at True Line Surveying regarding the rezoning request by Mr. David Oranger of a tract of land on Powhatan Road. The tract of land in question borders our property where we live at 3366 Powhatan Road. At present, this land is zoned RE, with the petitioner requesting it to be rezoned to I1. I respectfully ask the town of Clayton to deny this request for rezoning this property. While I understand why Mr. Oranger has requested the change, I do not believe it is in the best interest of our neighborhood or the Clayton community at this time. Powhatan Road is a semi-rural community, mostly residential or agricultural, from Powhatan Church to Wilson Mills on the left side of the road. We would very much like to keep it as rural as possible. In addition, the bordering tract of land between the one in question and Powhatan Church is owned by Griffles and has not been rezoned. It is still zoned RE and has been established as Corporate Lands for Learning Wildlife Habitat Council by Griffles. In keeping with the spirit of farmland versus farmland, spelled PHARMLAND, we believe this particular tract of land should be kept as it is, at least where zoning is concerned. While it would financially benefit Mr. Oranger for the zoning to be changed to I1, it would not benefit the community as a whole. I am sympathetic to his plight, however. Since my family owned this property in the past, I can relate to his wanting to sell it. However, rezoning to I1 could bring any number of businesses to our community and leave us virtually surrounded by industry. In addition, it would significantly decrease our property value. Powhatan Road is not a major thoroughfare. It is a rural two-lane road. With the construction of the second Novo Nordisk plant, the road has taken quite a beating. Noise and light pollution is ongoing 24 hours a day. If this tract of land were to be rezoned to I1, more industry would just compound the issues we already face and virtually surround us. This area of Powhatan Road is rich with history, all the way back to the 1500s and Chief Powhatan, the father of Pocahontas, who camped in the area many times, up more recent times when it was farmed by my family and friends. I believe it would be much more beneficial to Clayton to maintain this area RE and possibly expound on the history, the wildlife, and the ruralness of this area, instead of paving over it and making it another industrial park. Further, maybe one of our healthcare neighbors, Novo or Griffles, would like to take it on and make it a nature park or greenway to benefit employees as well as the community. Another option would be a small, subdivided neighborhood. A park or neighborhood would help sustain the rich heritage of the Powhatan community instead of covering it with more pavement. Either way, rezoning to I1 should not be allowed. Sincerely, Teresa Scott. Letter dated May 19th. On March 4th, 2020, my husband and I, is this a double? Let me see. Give me 1 second, I'm sorry. Okay. May 19th, 2020. On March 4th, 2020, my husband and I attended a neighborhood meeting at True Line Surveying regarding the rezoning request by Mr. David Oranger of a tract of land on Powhatan Road. The tract of land in question borders our property where we live at 3366 Powhatan Road. At present, this land is zoned RE, with the petitioner requesting that it be zoned to I1. I respectfully ask the town of Clayton to deny this request for rezoning this property. While I understand why Mr. Oranger has requested the change, I do not believe it is in the best interest of our neighborhood or the Clayton community at this time. Powhatan Road is a semi-rural community, mostly residential or agricultural, from Powhatan Road to Wilson's Mills on the left side of the road. We would very much like to keep it as rural as possible. In addition, the bordering tract of the land between the one in question and Powhatan Road is owned by Griffles and has not been rezoned. It is still rezoned RE and has been established as Corporate Lands for the Learning Wildlife Habitat Council by Griffles. In keeping with the spirit of farmland versus farmland, spelled PHARM land, we believe this particular tract of land should be kept as it is, at least where zoning is concerned. While it would financially benefit Mr. Oranger for the zoning to be changed to I1, it would not benefit the community as a whole. I am sympathetic to his plight, however. Since my family owned this property in the past, I can relate to his wanting to sell it. However, rezoning to I-1 could bring any number of businesses to our community and leave us virtually surrounded by industry. In addition, we believe it would significantly decrease our property value. Powhatan Road is not a major thoroughfare. It is a rural two-lane road. While with the construction of the second Novo Nordisk plant, the road has taken quite a beating. Noise and light pollution is ongoing 24 hours a day. If this tract of land were to be rezoned to I-1, more industry would just compound the issues we already face and virtually surround us. This area of Powhatan Road is rich with history all the way back to the 1500s. And Chief Powhatan, the father of Pocahontas, who camped in the area many times, up to more recent times when it was farmed by my family and friends. I believe it would be much more beneficial to Clayton to maintain this area RE and possibly expound on the history, the wildlife, and ruralness of this area instead of paving over it and making it another industrial park. Further, maybe one of our healthcare neighbors, Noble or Griffles, would like to take it on and make it a nature park or greenway to benefit employees as well as the community. Another option would be a small subdivided neighborhood. A park or neighborhood would help sustain the rich heritage of the Powhatan community instead of covering it with more pavement. Either way, rezoning to I-1 should not be allowed. Sincerely, Teresa and Jesse Scott. Third public comment received, dated Sunday, July 19th. I will read that into the record, and it is from Rita Jones. I just saw the information on the rezoning and need to make a comment regarding the cemetery shown in the tract. My maternal great-grandparents, as well as many other family members, are buried there on land that at one time was part of a large tract belonging to the Jones family that ran from the railroad tracks on one side and further down Powhatan Road than the current tract reaches. My concern has to do with the protection of and access to the cemetery if this becomes industrial. About 30 years ago, the youth group at Powhatan, OFWB Church, cleaned up the cemetery as a state conservation project. The church itself was built on Jones land, and they were trying to preserve history. This cemetery cannot be in any way be compromised or relocated. What are the plans for taking care of it if this becomes an industrial area? The family needs to know it will be respected and not destroyed. Continued by access by family member. Thank you for addressing this concern. Rita Otto Jones. And final comment received, public number 4, dated today, July 20th, from Joe Scott. Dear Clayton Town Council members, we own a property at 415 Hogan Circle, Clayton, in the subdivision of Glen Ridge. Our property backs up to the above tract. We oppose this rezoning due to the fact that it will decrease our property value, increase noise, which has already increased due to large expansion at Novo, and add to the already increase in traffic. When we bought our property, we wanted to live and have our children grow up in a small town. We feel that the town of Clayton is concerned with growth and forgetting why people moved here. It is growing so fast that it's just beginning to remind us of Cary, and that is not a place I would want ever to live. It's why people buy in Clayton. We signed a petition opposing this rezoning as well. We are asking the council to listen to the people and focus on what they want. This could be done in another area where there wouldn't be an impact to people's property and home value. Thank you for your time, Nelson and Joe Scott. And that is the completion of all the public comments that have been received.
Okay, thank you, Town Clerk. Any questions or comments from the information that Town Clerk has shared? All right, being none, the public hearing is now closed. Written comments will be accepted from the public until 11 p.m. tomorrow night, which is Tuesday, July 21st, 2020. All public comments should be sent to the attention of the Town Clerk, K. Moffitt at townofclaytonnc.org, or by phone at 919-553-5002. The Town of Clayton Town Council will take up this matter for deliberation and vote at the next regular meeting, which will be held Monday, August 3rd of 2020. So I will now place this on the August 3rd, 2020 agenda for a decision. All right, any further comments before we move on? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Oringer. Up next under new business is the resolution, Vector Truck Finance and Electric Fund reimbursement. I'll give the floor over to Finance Director Robert McCullough.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Tonight, we're asking council to approve a resolution authorizing the execution and delivery of an installment financing contract to acquire 2 new Vector trucks that are included in the FY 2021 budget. The financing is being provided by Republic First National Corporation in an amount not to exceed $870,000 at an interest rate of 3.59% for a period of approximately 6 years. Also in your package was a copy of the actual financing agreement. Council only needs to take action on the resolution itself, as the resolution authorizes town staff to enter into and execute the agreement. I'll be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Any questions or comments for Robert?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Mr. Grant.
Robert, on the payment schedule, I'm a little bit confused. I know that our original balance that we're looking to obtain is $865,382.42. But when I look at this schedule, to be quite frank with you, I'm not sure what I'm looking at, but it appears to me that not only do we have an interest rate, but we also have a service payment, and I'm not sure what that is. So if you could explain what I'm looking at, I would appreciate it.
Sure. So this is a capital lease, and it has a balloon payment in year 6. Along with the normal principal and interest, there's also a $12,000 a year, I think it is, maintenance agreement. That the maintenance agreement is not being financed. The maintenance agreement is just a separate line item that's in the budget each year to provide the maintenance on the Vector truck should need.
I'm trying to get attention. I have a question.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Brandon?
So I'm assuming that maintenance agreement is the service payment, which is $24,000 a year.
Yes, it's $12,000 for each Vector truck. We're procuring 2 Vector trucks, and so each Vector truck has an annual maintenance agreement amount of $12,000.
Okay. So is it fair to say that our total outlay of cost is going to be $1,105,922.87 over the life of the contract?
Yes, including the maintenance agreement, that would be correct. Principal and interest including the maintenance agreement.
Okay, and we're only financing the $865,382.
Correct. Maintenance agreement is not being financed.
Okay. That's all I got. That's all I got.
We are leasing these trucks, right?
It's a capital lease, so at the end of the term, we either make the balloon payment and take ownership, or we sell them back to the bank, and the bank pays off the note. In actuality, we actually have an existing Vector truck right now that is being replaced by one of these ones we're procuring, and that's exactly what's going to happen. The debt service on that existing Vector truck lease will be retired with the proceeds from turning the truck in at the end of the lease.
So we don't own the one we have.
We own it. It's in our name. We have to buy insurance. It's not operating lease. It's an actual capital lease. We take ownership. We own it. We take title to it. In lieu of making the final payment, the balloon payment, we are selling it back. The existing Vector truck we have currently right now is being sold back to the bank, and the bank will retire the debt with the proceeds from it. So we will not own that truck going forward. We're going to replace it with a new one, as well as requiring a second Vector truck for our operations. And again, both these Vector trucks are in the FY 2021 budget.
I could not find them.
They're under the capital outlay. They're in there.
Page 453.
Water sewer fund. It's in the water sewer fund.
I looked on the water sewer fund. I could not find those two trucks in the budget.
They're in there. There's a line item for financing proceeds, finance capital, as well as a capital outlay purchase in there. It's offsets. There's no effect on the budget. What does affect the budget is the debt service. We're getting financing proceeds to buy these trucks, and the debt service is built in to the budget as well.
Robert, those trucks are noted on page 453 of the budget under the water sewer fund. But where would we find the additional monies, like for the maintenance agreement and the interest in the budget? Where would that be?
Well, the debt service is under the debt service component, but the revenue stream from the sellback is actually not in the budget because we didn't know for sure if we were going to really take the ownership, sell them back or whatever. So when we pay the debt off, we're actually going to have a revenue stream coming in that's not in the budget at the moment. So the full debt service is in the budget, but when we actually sell this truck back to the bank, that revenue stream will come in, is not currently budgeted. So that'll be an additional revenue that's coming in.
And that should offset the maintenance and the interest for these two new ones?
It'll more than offset that. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, being none, I think the requested action is simple adoption of the resolution. Do I hear a motion?
This is me, Avery. Motion to approve 2020-21 and authorize execution of the financial agreement.
Second.
Okay, just for clarification, I'm not sure that we need it to include the authorization, but I could stand corrected, town clerk.
No, you are correct, Mayor. That motion has changed. We just simply need the adoption of the resolution.
Are you good with that, Avery?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, I have a motion. Did I hear a second?
Yes, sir. This is Jason. I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Sorry, the host muted me. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries, and I'll ask the clerk to conduct a roll call.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Granice,
Yes.
Councilmember Holder,
Yes.
Councilmember Bunn,
Yes.
Councilmember Everett.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and just
I would like to make a comment.
go ahead, Mr. Holder.
My budget copy did not have that page in it. I just showed it to Adam. I'm missing a bunch of pages in my budget book. So that's why I was questioning why it was even budgeted or not.
Okay, thank you for clarification. All right. So I just want to make sure that we got this the way we needed to. I believe that was an approval for the adoption of the resolution 2020-21. Did that also include 2020-22, or does that need to be done separately?
That needs to be done separately, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Robert, for clarification. So I'll entertain a motion then for the adoption of resolution 2020-22.
You're referring to the electric fund reimbursement, are you not?
Yes, yes.
Okay, that resolution is to allow the town to reimburse itself with tax-exempt financing for capital projects that are related to new development activity in the electric fund. This is consistent with the rate model. We identified some new development activity projects that will not exceed $2,500,000. At the conclusion of finishing those projects, the town plan is to go to the issue revenue bonds to reimburse ourselves for the costs we incurred in those projects related to new development activity. So this resolution, this is the technical document we need to reimburse ourselves when we want to go and issue revenue bonds for these projects that are to be completed over the course of the current fiscal year.
I move we approve the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the adoption of the resolution 2020-22. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Clerk, roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Granice,
Yes.
Councilmember Holder,
Yes.
Councilmember Bunn,
Yes.
Councilmember Everett.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Robert. Up next is street abandonment, Enterprise Drive, right away.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Joshua Baird, Town Engineer. You guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Perfect. Before you tonight is a resolution of intent to abandon a portion of Enterprise Drive. To provide some background on the project, Cameron Crossing, there we go, you got it on the slide there. Cameron Crossing was a private residential development that was approved back in December of 2017. As part of that project, Enterprise Drive was to be realigned as shown on the screen before you. On June 15th, 2020, as part of the consent agenda, Town Council accepted the new realigned portion as a public roadway. The next step in that is to abandon the old right-of-way per General Statutes 168-299, which provides the town authorization to abandon and close certain right-of-ways. Here on the screen of this slide, you see the new right-of-way that has been constructed and accepted by Town Council in yellow, and the red, which is the old Enterprise Drive that is up for right-of-way abandonment. So just to put it in perspective, right here off of 70 Business. The next slide is a aerial shot of what it looks like today. Or as of a couple days ago, you can see that the new road has been constructed as part of the project, as part of the development, and you can see the old right-of-way where the road infrastructure has been demolished and abandoned, and the contractor and developer working to revegetate and reseed that. And so you get a understanding here of the new right-of-way and what is out there. The town utilities that were in that right-of-way, they have also been reworked such that they are in the new right-of-way, and there is a small portion of sewer that has an existing easement. Town utilities are taken care of, and the town really does not need the right-of-way for the utilities either. As far as the abandonment, following the general statutes, the existing underlying property, there are two adjacent property owners. The land and the property itself would go to them upon the actual closing of the right-of-way. Tonight's resolution is only a resolution of intent. It is not the actual closing of it. It is just authorizing staff to follow general statutes and proceed with the following steps of notifying property owners, posting it, and ensuring that we follow the steps outlined by the state through that. So with your approval of this tonight, we will follow steps outlined in the resolution, and a public hearing will be set for September 8th at 6 p.m. With that, I'll take any questions from the council or mayor.
Questions or comments for Joshua? All right, being none, I'll entertain a motion for the adoption of the resolution.
I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution 2020-23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for adoption. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Call on the clerk for a roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Granice,
Yes.
Councilmember Holder,
Yes.
Councilmember Bunn,
Yes.
and Councilmember Everett.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will set a public hearing for the September 8th, 2020 regular town council meeting. Okay, up next is the stormwater program development update.
Tonight, I would like to provide an update on what staff has been working on in terms of transitioning stormwater and erosion control programs from the county to an in-house program. As many of you are aware, the county currently handles both stormwater and erosion control permitting for the town. With the significant growth in Clayton and really in this area, the county has somewhat struggled to keep up with all the growth that we are seeing. On the development side, from a developer, it's separate submittals to the county and then also to Clayton. And there's advantages to having local expertise and contacts here with the town as development contractors are working through and building here in Clayton. Being able to take those programs ensures that we have control over these items and we are meeting the requirements that are set forth before us in our NPDES, our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Phase 2 permits, and other requirements that we are subject to, and gives us control over these, ensure that we're meeting those requirements. So just kind of an update on where we're at. The FY20 budget included for half the year, 6 months, a stormwater engineer position, a new position. I'm happy to say that we have filled that position with an individual, Susan Locklear. She's on the call with us tonight. She comes with lots of experience. She has she's a licensed professional engineer, has her certified floodplain manager certificate. She has 13 years of experience with the city of Raleigh and 8 years with NCDOT. With Raleigh and others, she's got lots of experience with erosion control, with stormwater permitting, and floodplain management. So we're excited to have her on board to help us out with that. And in addition, she's lived in this area for a while and she's seen Clayton grow and she's familiar with Clayton. So amidst all that's going on with COVID, unfortunately, we haven't been able to have a formal employee introduction, but did want to at least remotely provide a little employee introduction to you guys. And if you see her name or see her, wanted you to know who she is. So we're excited to have her on board and really helping us to kickstart these programs and put things in place in order to transition this to the town. As far as the actual program itself, we anticipate there being 3 ordinances that support the program. The first is going to be an erosion and sediment control ordinance. The second is going to be a stormwater, and then the third, an illicit discharge. I'm going to walk through kind of each of these, provide an update on where they're at and what they are about, and as we proceed here. So the first, erosion and sediment control. This is a requirement of our Phase 2 permit that I mentioned earlier. one of the minimum measures is construction site runoff. There's also other requirements in the state, SPCA, the Sediment Pollution Control Act, that development in our state is subject to. We've developed a draft ordinance that is based on a model ordinance that is put out by the state. We took the draft ordinance and have applied town. We have been in touch with staff at the state and got some initial feedback and working through that proposed ordinance. The ordinance is similar to others, the county. It's similar to other jurisdictions. Anyone that has formal delegation from the state to enact sediment erosion control has somewhat of a similar ordinance that they go by. So it is somewhat similar to what developers would and construction would be subject to currently under a permit that is issued by the county. The process, there is a process for receiving formal delegation from the state. It is through the Sedimentation Control Commission. What staff recommend and propose is that we've taken this ordinance, this model ordinance, and we've applied it to the town of Clayton. We have requested to go before the Sedimentation Control Commission in August. Requested the agenda there to receive feedback through what they call an informal review. And the purpose of that is to really ensure that our ordinance has all of the mechanisms and what the state is looking for as far as enforcing erosion and sediment control. Upon getting their feedback through the informal review in August, we plan to update that ordinance and then proceed with a public hearing, put it back out, put it to the public to really get some feedback, to have a public hearing. And having gone through an informal review from the state, we will be able to say that these are the minimum items that the state wants to see in our ordinance that then we put before council to adopt. Once we go through the public hearing and the ask council to adopt it, then there's another step that we would go back before the Sedimentation Control Commission and request the formal delegation. So that is the actual formal delegation. We're anticipating that occurring in November once we get to this process, and then implementing the program January 1 of 2021. In your packet, we have provided the draft ordinance, and I'd like to just reiterate that is where we're at now. We certainly will be coming back to council through the proper channels and process from a public hearing and getting feedback. But wanted to go ahead and put that before you all so that you could see what we are going to the Sedimentation Control Commission with. So there'll be other opportunities to look into this, and you'll be hearing more about it. But prior to going, wanted to put this before you. As far as working through this, the program as well is working on different policies and procedures that we will utilize to enforce the program, ensuring that we've got everything set as far as our documents, our inspection templates, and setting everything up such that when we implement this program, we're set and we have everything in place that we need. Another aspect of it is the fees. We will be coming to council with some fees. I can give you a little bit of feedback at this point on what we anticipate that looking like, but we will actually provide more information when we come back with the actual ordinance for adoption. The county currently has certain review fees. They have a combined review and grading permit fee. We anticipate our fees aligning somewhat with the county. The structure may be slightly different to give some more flexibility between the plan review and the actual grading permit. However, overall, and for similar size sites, we anticipate the fee structure and the total amount of fees being similar to the county. So just to kind of reiterate on this one, again, this is kind of, I wanted to put it before you before we went to the Sedimentation Control Commission, and there is no formal action that we need tonight. We wanted to provide an update on that. The next ordinance to discuss would be a stormwater. This would be this is another minimum measure as far of our phase 2 permit. The post-construction minimum measure stormwater ordinance would ensure that we can meet all the requirements of the phase 2 permit as well. This is something that we are still working through. We're working and really doing some benchmarking and seeing where we compare and working through a draft ordinance that we would anticipate putting for council in the next few months. With this one, we'll also have a public hearing on and give some more details as far as what is included that when we bring that forward. The third ordinance is an illicit discharge, and that we will dive into with the next agenda item. But before I do that, is there any questions from the council or mayor regarding the first two ordinances, proposed ordinances?
Questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Mr. Granis.
That's a great report, Joshua. I appreciate it. Could you please reiterate for us why we're making the transition from the county to taking on our own program?
Certainly. There are several requirements that the town has through our phase 2 permit and other requirements, and with the growth that we've seen compared to kind of throughout the county, it's been difficult for the county to really keep up with the intense growth that we're seeing right here in this area. And there's a need for additional staff and additional help. So for us as the town, bringing additional staff on here to actually oversee those programs and ensure that we've got staff available here. We have a local resource for developers, and the submittals, they can all come through the town as far as stormwater, erosion control, along with the rest of our submittals from a planning and engineering standpoint. And actually having resources here that can help the development community versus spaced out throughout the county.
Right. When the development community was provided access to look at this ordinance, I'm assuming that we let them know how to get into listserv or the website, and I was wondering how long they had to respond.
Sure. So we did put this out to two listservs. One, the development community. It went out on the 6th of July, and we were open to receiving feedback for a week. I believe it closed on the 13th, last Monday. The illicit discharge, again, we haven't jumped into it a whole lot, but it's also applicable to business owners and others, not just necessarily the development community or construction. We also sent it out to listservs that we have for businesses and other retailers here in town, so not just the development community.
Okay. What sort of responses, if any, did you get for the stormwater piece? I know you didn't get any for the illicit discharge, or at least I think that's what it said in our agenda packet.
That's correct. We did receive one set of comments regarding basically just the new program in general. They weren't necessarily specific to the any details within the ordinance, but basically just looking to see that it's aligned with other programs for developers and engineers and others that do work here in Clayton or other communities are familiar with the regulations, and that there are really no substantial differences. They recommended that we be in line with others such that people knew what to expect when they were submitting, whether they're submitting here in town or other municipalities or jurisdictions in the area. There was a recommendation that the process of applying be, quote, as easier than other applications in other governments. And so certainly taking some of this into feedback as we develop those procedures and policies that we implement the program through. And then one of the others reads, the rules should encourage flexibility, tolerance, and possibility of alternative means of compliance for problems arising from extreme events such as hurricanes. And certainly that is something that there is the model owners and the state understands that sometimes we have events like that. So we have received those and evaluated it based on the ordinance.
Okay. And do you think that 1 week is really an adequate amount of time to respond?
So for the erosion control ordinance, we anticipate there being a additional time when we actually put it before town council. At this point in time, early in the process, prior to going before the Sedimentation Control Commission, we were limited on the amount of time that we could provide, but did want to receive some initial feedback. I think when we get the feedback from the Sedimentation Control Commission, we'll be in a position that we can put it out there for a longer time and in fact have that public hearing and ensure that we get all the feedback from the public. At that time, we'll also know that what we are putting out there and what we are proposing is in fact all the minimum, it has all the minimum and exactly what the state expects to see in it. And so that we're not adding anything from the state at a later time. What we put out to the public will have what the state expects to see from us in our ordinance at that time.
Okay. Also noted that the appeals process appears to be 90, it could be as long as 90 days. You think there's any way that that could be shortened?
It's something we can evaluate. The process that is outlined is similar to that the state recommends in their model ordinance. I think a lot of that timeline is really just kind of based on the government structure of meeting dates and how certain meetings and board schedules aligned. So moving forward, that's something that we can certainly evaluate and look into to see if that is something that is possible.
Okay. Last question. You had mentioned that the permit fees are probably going to be similar to the county. Could you share with us what the amount is at this point, or no? Estimated amount?
I can provide what the I mean, there's a structure that the county has, and I can certainly provide some of that. It's broken down into different reviews and different sizes of sites. So it's not as simple necessarily as reading a fee off, but I can certainly provide some information as to what the county currently charges if for further review. If that's something you'd like to hear, I can do that, or
I would be interested in that, yes.
As in a table in the future correspondence, or is that something more now? Or?
No, not now, but I think before the next meeting. Of course, you are asking for improvement this evening, right?
I apologize. I didn't catch all of that. I'm sorry. Can you say that again, Councilman Grant?
Sure.
We're getting double feedback from y'all. I don't know why. Getting an echo effect.
Let me try it again. Is that working now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're looking for action tonight, I think. Is that correct? Oh, this was information only. So no, I think at the next meeting that would be sufficient. If we could add it, as an update.
Yeah, one of the things we're trying to do right now is to really benchmark with other municipalities, not just the county, to really see where everyone is at as far as the review fees and how they are structured. When we bring this to you for actual adoption and public hearing, we do anticipate sharing additional information as far as where we will land compared to other jurisdictions.
That's great for me. That'll work. That's all I had. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, if not, let's move on quickly to the illicit discharge ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the minimum measures of the phase 2 permit that I continue to reference is illicit discharge detection and elimination. Before you on the screen, you have the actual definition: any unlawful disposal, placement, emptying, dumping, spillage, leakage, pumping, pouring, emission, or other discharge of any substance other than stormwater into stormwater conveyance waters of the state or upon the land in such proximity to the same such that substance is likely to reach stormwater conveyance or waters of the state. So with all that said, basically anything other than rain into a storm drain. So to provide some examples of what that could be, an illicit discharge would be things such as motor oil, other automotive fluids. If you have a commercial car wash and the runoff with the soapy suds, the oil, the dirt, the grime from the car wash leading to a storm drain, that would be an example of an illicit discharge. excessive antifreeze, oil spilling, paint, cement, sediment slurry, or any kind of detergents or cleaning agent. Kind of provide some examples here of things that other municipalities deal with. Here you see that commercial car washing. You see the suds and the soap that are coming out of the site down the asphalt and into the curb, then that hits the storm drain. Another example from an automotive facility where you have oils and other liquids that are running out of the bay to the curb and then straight to a storm drain. And these affect water quality. The purpose of this is to really ensure that we are protecting water quality. We're protecting the environment here in Clayton. I think we could all say and agree that yes, these are bad. A lot of the public, I'll say, may not understand completely that the storm drain system is not the same as the sanitary sewer system. The sanitary sewer system goes to our treatment plant. A lot of times these storm drains go straight to the outfall, straight to waters of the state, the stream, a river. And so there is no treatment on the storm drain. So a lot of the times you have these discharges such as this can go straight to a stream and affect water quality, habitat, aquatic life. So I think we all agree that it is no good and certainly can impact water quality. And again, one of the minimum measures here on your screen, I've provided basically what our phase 2 permit says we shall do. It says we should maintain legal authorities. I'm not going to read through all of these, just kind of hit on some of this, ensuring that we have a base map of our system, we know where our major outfalls are, and that we are actively and working to ensure that there are no illicit connection or illicit discharges to our system. A portion of this also is public education, ensuring that the public, like I said, understands that these storm drains do not go to a sanitary sewer treatment plant. A lot of times they go straight to a stream, and anything we dump there can end up in our streams and our waters, and certainly eventually to the Neuse River, and which is a drinking water source, and we have water intake. So currently understanding how that can affect water quality. The phase 2 permit, we have we've had our phase 2 permit for a number of years, and we are proposing a ordinance to really formalize this and ensure that the public and our businesses understand that this is illegal to dump anything to the storm drain, and just really laying that out and formalizing this requirement of our phase 2 permit. Next slide, I believe, let's see, I've got just, not gonna run through each of these right now, but just kind of the purpose of the ordinance. This is outlined in it, obviously protecting public health, protecting the environment. And the purpose of this ordinance is really just establishing that administrative and enforcement procedures that we have associated with this. The ordinance itself in your packet, draft ordinance is broken up into 5 different sections here, just general provisions that outline things, the objectives of why this ordinance is out there, explaining basically what an illicit discharge is through that non-stormwater discharge controls, and then talks through penalties and payment if something were to occur. The illicit discharge, again, it's a lot to do with public education and really understanding that these systems are different, and that anything that's dumped in the storm drain does not necessarily get treated. So a big part of this is educating the public and ensuring that they understand what the purpose of this is and how harmful it could be to the environment or to our waters here. Next slide. Just kind of in a nutshell of what this means for our community. It just is really formalizing. It means that it's illegal for residents, businesses, developers, contractors to basically allow any non-stormwater substance into the town storm drain system, streams or rivers. And it's really big, and the way we see this and our goal and implement, and you guys adopt this ordinance, is really just education over enforcement. Just really educating the public through different avenues that this is wrong. Our purpose is to protect water quality here and not to issue penalties. That's not our goal. Our goal is to ensure that we all are protecting our resources here, and that we all understand what can happen if we dump things in the storm drain, and just educating the public on our system. The draft ordinance is in your packet. We have also put that out, as I mentioned, with the erosion control. It was put out on July 6th to the development community listserv that's maintained by the town, as well as businesses, since this could affect the businesses in town. And we did not receive any feedback on the proposed ordinance. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll take any questions regarding it and answer any questions there may be from the council.
All right, any questions or comments? Whoops. All right. I don't hear any questions or comments, so I think the potential action that we're looking for this is the adoption of the ordinance.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the adoption of the ordinance 2020-07-01. Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Ask the clerk to make a roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Granice,
Yes.
Councilmember Holder,
Yes.
Councilmember Bunn,
Yes.
Councilmember Everett.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And up next on our agenda is the economic development strategy. And I'm going to give the floor over to Patrick Pierce, which I'm hearing feedback on my side. I don't know if you're hearing feedback.
All right, thank you very much. So again, I'm Patrick Pierce, Economic Development Director here for the town of Clayton. Tonight, we're seeking town council approval for Clayton's first economic development strategy here. So we've got months of work that have culminated in preparing this strategy for your consideration. You should have a full copy of that strategy in your packet here, and I'm going to work to summarize that, the high points here, the 70 plus pages in about 10 minutes. Outline the process that we use to gather input from the community and businesses, review economics and demographic analysis, look at the goals and strategies, and really take a high level look at our implementation strategy here. So happy to take questions along the way or at the end. And also just want to note that Penny Whiteheart, our consultant from Creative EDC, as well as Jennings Gray from Electricities, who helped sponsor this, are both here as well to answer questions, although I'm happy to field most of those. Okay, so why an economic development strategy? I'm sure you spent the weekend contemplating this, but in all seriousness, it's a culmination of many questions that the community has asked of us here. And let's go to the next slide. So some examples of that might be, why does Clayton want to grow its vibrant downtown district? Does Clayton want to grow more high-paying advanced manufacturing jobs? Does it want options to get residents out of traffic? Should be easier to navigate around town. Should all residents have access to more higher education options within Clayton? Should residents be able to fulfill all of their shopping and culinary needs in Clayton? The answer, I hope, is yes to all or at least most of these questions here. So what is an economic development strategy? So really it's about assessing and identifying your strengths and weaknesses, what are future threats and opportunities that you can identify, and really understanding what our strategic position is within the environment. Once you've done that, creating alignment around economic development priorities with your partners, because economic development is a team sport. And when you do that, creating an implementation plan, again, that makes sure that this is something that you're doing together with your partners and not just us as town staff here. Next slide, please. So we began, or I guess not we, I was not here yet, but this process, we, the town, began this process in mid-2019. My predecessor, Dave DeYoung. There was input provided by over 350 people and businesses here through focus groups, interviews, community surveys. Through that, developed a SWOT analysis and an economic and demographic profile. This kind of got paused at the end of the year with some departures in the department, as well as the COVID-19, the onset of the pandemic. That was revived when I arrived here in April, and really we spent time putting this into kind of a COVID context, making sure that it was still a relevant piece of work and that it was going to really hold up, several years into the future here. So before moving, I do want to thank our Economic Development Steering Committee members here, as well as, again, Electricities for sponsoring this process, and to Penny Whiteheart and Creative EDC for all of their help throughout this. So our SWOT analysis, a couple of highlights here. As was mentioned, we are both, the bedroom community to Raleigh and the Research Triangle, but also we are, Raleigh and Research Triangle are a bedroom community to us. What makes us a special place is, the sense of community, our family orientation, our downtown, our forwardability, and our great industrial base. And this gives us more opportunities for downtown redevelopment, more ways to connect people and get people throughout the city, things that we could improve upon, how we, improve our marketing messages, explore a conference center, that maybe even as part of a library redevelopment, and leverage the newcomers like myself that are increasingly finding their way to Clayton. So weaknesses, I look at as opportunities, but with this great growth we've had, there's, planning for that can be a challenge. So that is something that the community identified as a weakness. I think doing a transition from more green tape and less red tape, whether that's real or perceived, it's there. Really working to be a regional player. Again, that, a community identified a lack of chain restaurants, and really working together to address things like congestion, increasing competition, budget constraints, and maybe conflicting expectations of those that have lived here for decades versus those that are brand new here. So this is one of the charts there, but I think what was a really important piece in terms of what we wanted to revise, I guess, going forward from April on, is an addition of an infrastructure section. If you notice, in infrastructure, business recruitment, and transportation, we're top in terms of sustainable long-term economic development. And I think that that's a very important part of what it is that we do here and the work that we collectively as a town do together. And you'll see that reflected in our goals and strategies. And I think JD made that point in terms of the wastewater facility. Almost every department in the town has had some sort of a piece in that. And I think that those sorts of investments should be reflected here. Yeah, next slide, that's good. But in doing so, we also have to make sure we don't lose sight on what we do better than any other city or town, which is our downtown. And that redevelopment piece is squarely within our goals and strategies here. So a few just highlights from our economic development profile. We are a young town, which is great. We have a higher than average graduation rate, but there is opportunity to increase our college degree attainment. As we and our growing labor force and low unemployment, obviously these are pre-COVID, but I think still with the strength of our manufacturing center and the quality of those jobs that we have here, we still have the opportunity to keep that going. We need to address commute times, and we have to remember that it's a balance between small and large businesses, because a large portion of our businesses here have less than 10 employees. So small businesses matter, big businesses matter. It really takes all of those things to have a successful economy. Okay, next slide. So without reading these to you, really, these goals really address, again, that focus on big business, on small business, on recruitment of new businesses and entrepreneurs, the growth of our existing businesses, the strength of our downtown, enhancing quality of life and telling our story, and an infrastructure development that really underpins all of those pieces. Next slide. So goal one, so from our goals, some of the strategies that the community identified were, working with allies on our business recruitment, really making sure we identify sites and buildings for potential investors that want to come here, working with entrepreneurs and to continue to grow small businesses, and finding ways to promote, working with those existing businesses here to help them expand, to get more investment here. Next slide.
Patrick?
Yes, sir.
Michael, just two quick questions.
Yeah.
obviously goal one, grow jobs for Clayton through recruitment. Do you have a plan in place yet to make that become a reality?
So we are working on that. I obviously have ideas given my experience, and I think a lot of our recruitment work also is working with our partners, the Johnston County EDC, Chris Johnson and his team there, as well as our retail strategies folks are working really as close partners. A lot of the RFPs go to our county partners, those other folks, and also working in, as we're watching COVID develop here, figuring out ways with, trade shows, will they bounce back? What will they look like in the future? So that's why in terms of our implementation plan, that's work we're going to continue doing. But we're focused on in addition to that, really, what are the fundamental things? Do we make sure we have industrial property that we can move people to? Do we have the right retail places? Do we know all those different opportunities there for folks that want to come in, given that right now we're in a position where there's not a whole lot of external recruiting in terms of travel, the trade shows and such like that can be done.
Okay. Then on the next slide, position available sites and building for potential investors or employers. You touched on that in your answer. Can you elaborate maybe a little bit more?
So I think first is, we know where some of these sites are now. I think we want to formalize and have a better process in terms of how we capture which sites are there. And oftentimes it's about, we have our site selector tool, and those are the things that are on the market that are being offered by commercial real estate, but really getting to know property owners and their intentions in downtown, but really town-wide, and understanding that, what their intentions are with their property and how we can help move those things forward. Because those who won't show up when you do a real estate search on our website or any other website, because those are kind of those off-market opportunities that's important for us to know. So it's about doing that outreach, building those relationships with those folks.
Okay, thank you.
So again, kind of touching on this, we know that downtown is the heart of Clayton, and really an important piece of our placemaking. So really knowing parcel by parcel downtown, what's available, what's going to become available. And of course, parking is an issue that I've learned is, will continue to be an issue, and something that we want to, especially as we start coming out of COVID and there's more activity here, finding ways to address the parking situation. Next slide. So again, this is really about, to summarize it, it's about telling our story. It's about telling what we do and getting people around within the town of Clayton. In that communication piece, our team has done a really good job, and Jen working closely with Stacy on getting current information out to the business community. We want to be able to do that and continue to have community champions and advocates out there that we can leverage as we're doing this, because that's important, that it's not just town staff telling the story, but it's businesses, it's residents, it's other folks out there that can advocate on behalf of us. Next slide. And last is the infrastructure piece. So infrastructure, again, being broad, that's hard infrastructure, that's highways, that's opportunities for commuter rail and bus rapid transit. It's greenways and trails and open space, but it's also some of the softer infrastructure. So that can be, really our schools, whether that's our K-12 education, our college education, and making sure that workforce is, increasingly important as we want to do as we want to do business recruitment. We need to make sure that we have the talent here to do that. And then utilities and all that we've talked about here, and you all have confronted when it comes to wastewater and electrical and broadband capacity within the town. So hard and soft infrastructure across the board. And again, these might not be things that we would always take the lead on, but these are things that we certainly know that we play a strong, that we play a role in, and it's important for us to champion these issues in the community. Okay, so last, in my few minutes here, I want to just cover some of the implementation pieces here. I'm going to really focus in on the near-term priorities, but happy to take questions on any of them. So to what we're actually doing to implement this, goal one, create a formalized business retention expansion program. So really targeting, make sure that we're building those relationships there with these business owners. We understand their needs. Again, getting that inventory of sites for industrial, commercial, and retail to make sure we're empowering our partners that are doing this recruitment work, on our behalf, and making sure that we've got an easy way for entrepreneurs and small businesses to come start a business here. And then really communicating clearly what it is that makes Clayton special and what our goals are as it relates to industrial development, commercial development, retail development, etc. So I want to be clear here that we're already doing a lot of these things. So some of it's a matter of formalizing these processes and really kind of making them clear. And again, like I said, things like business recruitment, that we're doing that work now. It's, but these items here in the near term are things that we're going to really lean into here in the next 18 months. Next slide. On 2, and as it relates to downtown, that's really, our first bullet's really around DDA and really strengthening that. I think DDA was not in great shape maybe 2 years ago. A big thank you to those folks that, really did that hard work and, taking it a step forward this past year. Right now, we don't have the events and the concerts and all the things happening. So taking an opportunity here to make sure we've got clarity on roles, inside, and make sure there's good processes there, making sure that we've got, clarity of roles with our outside partners, and really just getting DDA back into a really high performing organization here is important. In downtown properties, really important there. And then just, really being a catalyst for some of those projects that are out there that, that economic development will touch. Next slide. So again, tell our story. So use the strategic plan as a way to, as part of our communication priority, make sure as, Stacy moves forward on redeveloping the website, making sure like a calendar events that rank very high with people and other things that help with economic development and telling our story are there. And then exploring some of the historic signage and those, making sure that signage really, meets the goals and priorities here for the town. And last goal is really about, there's a lot of transportation opportunities and projects going on right now. There's a lot of commuter rail and transit. There's, a lot of work going on, talking about a potential JCC campus. And we've been working closely with the library on a potential redevelopment there. So these things may take longer than that 18 months to see to fruition, but there's a lot of meaningful work that's going on now that really has to happen. And our team is pairing with partners in other departments as well as outside of the town in terms of making those things happen. So really having that at the top of our list. So as we move into, what's successful on implementation, as I mentioned before, economic development is a team sport. So it needs to be big T town, like capital T town in terms of from an economic development department. It's got to be our plan across the town for economic development, but it also has to be little T in terms of all of our partners across the town that that are going to make this successful. And it's about building new relationships and partnerships and strengthening old ones, especially given that I'm new, Jen's relatively new to the position. So leveraging those partnerships and really, strengthening the ones that we have. We talked about communication and keeping that momentum. There's going to be challenges and we've got to make sure we're clear about those and that we're tracking our progress. And then really when it comes down to execution, we're going to have to be nimble. You never know when a pandemic's going to strike. You might have to pivot a little bit and maybe a little more circuitous of a route than you had anticipated, but knowing the goal and where you want to go is really important. And of course, just executing and doing what we say that we're going to do as we go forward. So with that, I take any questions and thank you for your time.
Awesome. Great work, Patrick. Thank you so much. Any questions or comments from council?
I just want to say I think Patrick's done a great job of hitting the ground running, and this is outstanding work, and I look forward to seeing this follow through.
Thank you, sir.
For me, I think Patrick, you've done a really good job here. This is, in my words, the roadmap that we've needed ever since the department was created. And so I applaud you and Jen for getting us a good start on the roadmap.
Thank you.
And, you know, a lot of, and a shout out to, you know, our friends at Electric Cities, because they were phenomenal in, you know, kind of helping to facilitate this vision and goal. And, you know, like Patrick spoke to earlier, it definitely is about partnership and building those relationships, strengthening those that are existing and adding new ones to the mix. So great work.
Mr. Mayor, I have to echo that sentiment, and I apologize for not mentioning that since I'm the representative to Electric Cities. So let me get the egg off of my face.
No problem. All right, any other comments for Patrick? All right, thank you again, Patrick. Great work.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to move on to staff reports, beginning with the manager.
Yeah, so I do want to just touch base with the council, as we had promised as the budget was adopted, that we do want to at least monthly give you all an update on where we stand with our budget. And I guess the good news so far is we do have another month of sales tax revenues that have come in. And we were, of course, all very interested to see how the pandemic and the COVID policies and other things in the state would impact Clayton's revenues on sales tax in particular. And the good news is that mail sales tax distribution report came in stronger than expected. Actually, similar to April, a little bit higher than it was in 2019 even. And what that means for us in our budget is that we actually surpassed our budget number in May for sales tax revenue. So everything that comes in June, and we know there'll be June sales tax receipts, of course, is going to just be above and beyond what we'd already budgeted. So that's good news from us in our revenues. That's good news for us in our budget, because we had budgeted, of course, a 10% decrease based on where we thought the budget was going to end. And of course, that was below what we thought we had budgeted before. So that gives us a little bit of cushion in our budget, given that we had that decrease in there already. Of course, what we don't know is how sales tax is going to continue to perform, and we shouldn't have that expectation that we're just going to continue to exceed, given that we are in a recession and we don't know what the end even looks like. So we're always about 45 days behind in knowing what the prior months were, and we'll continue to track and report on that. But that is some good news for us as we started this new budget year. Given that we don't have a lot of data to share with you on how we're spending in this budget, or revenues for that matter, given the delays in some of those things, what we are working on though is identifying and have asked all departments, as you have indicated, to identify costs or expenditures that they're going to try to hold back until we get further into this budget year. Just to give us time to understand what ramifications might be occurring related to revenues. And so departments have been very, very willing to do that, and we're continuing to work with them on that. And in future months, we'll have a little more information as we understand our spending and our revenue stream to give you better updates. But I didn't want this month to go by, even though we're still very early, obviously, in the budget year. So happy to entertain any questions or requests for information moving forward.
All right, questions or comments for the manager? All right, anything else, Adam?
That is all.
Thank you. Town attorney?
No report.
Thank you. Town clerk?
No reports, thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to other staff and discuss the food truck ordinance update with planning director.
Good evening. As you may have seen, we have had an increase in food trucks. We've always had food trucks around. We have food trucks at our different events. And we do have a food truck ordinance. It is available online. I'll be happy to read it out for you tonight if you would like. But we also have had some complaints about food trucks as well. We do have rules and regulations regarding how far they have to be away from a brick and mortar. facility. So currently that is approximately 400 feet. And then with the state of that we are in with the pandemic and with COVID-19, that everyone is struggling, obviously. And so we were going to take a look at our food truck ordinance and do some preliminary research on what other communities do and what their regulations are. And we wanted to get the feel of the council to see if that was something the council would be interested in seeing an update to, a possible update to, once we present more benchmarking.
I can only speak for me, but yeah, I would like to see that. And I would like to know about, proximity of food trucks to residential development. One incident that happened most frequently is kind of near the neighborhood that I live in, where we can hear generators running early morning and late evening coming through the neighborhood. So I think if we're going to look at where we are and where we need to be, I think that we need to think about what are the repercussions of a food truck being near a residential neighborhood for a prolonged period of time. That's really basically all that I have insofar as a food truck ordinance update. There may be other things I'm not thinking of, but that's definitely one that I would love to get some feedback on.
Okay.
Samantha, I'm on board with the mayor with the proximity to a residential, especially with the noise ordinance. I don't know if we've got a noise ordinance with that food truck ordinance or not, but I think we probably should look at that. Also, I've got a question. If you're a commissary, shouldn't you have a grease trap on that facility?
So we are going to be ensuring that we involve Brandon Carroll, who is in charge of our grease traps and backflow, to make sure that they have the adequate facilities at the commissaries. And we're going to present a lot of different information, because I actually found out some stuff I didn't know by a councilman who informed us that there's one facility that has quite a few, more than 10 food trucks that they go to one commissary. So I definitely want to do some fact finding and kind of present the information, and then as well do some benchmarking and come back to you all within a month with that information.
Good. Thanks.
All right. Are there any other comments for Samantha as it pertains to the food truck ordinance?
Mr. Mayor, would it be possible to get her to send us the current ordinance?
Absolutely.
Sure, I can send it to you. No problem.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Samantha. I'll now move on to informal discussion and public comment.
We have received no additional public comment.
Okay, thank you, Town Clerk, and I'll bounce down to council comments.
Mr. Mayor, I have one.
Mr. Granis.
I got a phone call, or actually that's not correct. I got a text from a citizen who lives in very close proximity to First Street Tavern, indicating that the noise was pretty excessive due to a band and a lot of folks being outside. And it was after 10 o'clock. And was wondering if our ordinance officer might look into that.
Sure. I'm sorry. What was that location? I was losing signal.
First Street Tavern.
Okay.
And a little history. I know in the past that this has been an issue, but it's been quite a while. And when I say quite a while, I'm going to say at least a year to maybe as much as 16 months.
Okay. We will look into that for sure.
Mr. Granis, this is Stacy, and only because as the public information officer, I often get requests and questions about noise. And as you know, we do have a noise ordinance that expires at 10 o'clock. And I would encourage anyone that ever gets a noise complaint to call 911. Our police officers enforce the noise ordinance and they can't respond a day or a week after. They need to go when it's happening. So please encourage anyone to use the dispatchers that dispatch our police to respond to noise when it's happening.
Absolutely, Stacy, and believe me, I do that anytime I get a noise ordinance issue. That's probably one of the first three questions that I ask. And I do know that this particular individual has, in previous issues, called the 911 number on many occasions. But thank you.
Anyone else? I would like to just mention one, Samantha. I would like for the town of Clayton to find out what is going on Moore Street. Specifically, if you're heading down Moore Street towards Highway 70 and the last apartment complex on your left before you turn left into the BB&T bank driveway. That entire area of that apartment complex is completely enamored with chaos. And there are parking spaces that are filled with lumber and covered with plastic. There are work trucks that are parked out there that have not been moved in weeks. There is lumber and materials of some sort underneath tarps laying in side yards of that apartment complex. It's a hot mess. And it's been that way for several months, and there is absolutely no construction and or remodeling going on that I'm aware of as I pass through there morning, noon, and afternoon. So if we can get someone to check into that, I think that would be helpful.
Sure, we'll look into that. We have cited them in the past for junk and debris and disposing of trash outside of the dumpsters. And I'm going to assume and speak for Josh that he saw the construction-like material and assumed they were doing construction. But if it's sitting there and they're not doing anything with it, then it's going to be considered junk and debris. So we will take a look at that.
Perfect. All right. Any other comments by council? All right. If not, based on our agenda, we're going into a closed session. And I will entertain a motion for closed session.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go into closed session. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. And the clerk needs to do a roll call vote on that as well.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Granice?
Yes.
Councilmember Holder?
Yes.
Councilmember Bunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Everett?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Town Clerk. There will be a 15-minute recess before that gets started. 10 to 15-minute recess before that gets started. And I'm not anticipating any action. All right. So with that being said, we'll now go into closed session.
I move we adjourn the regular session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn our regular meeting schedule. Is there any other discussion? All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Town clerk, I don't know if we need a roll call vote on that. She's on mute.
She said she's good to go.
Okay.
You're good to go. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. Thank you, staff and everybody.
Everybody have a safe night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, you too.